Hi, Marshal. Something's blocking starlight at grid Epsilon 7. Kareth Zune didn't look up from his command chair. He tapped a claw against the armrest, calculating fuel consumption for the patrol's return run. The younger officers always saw phantoms this far out. Deep space bred nerves. Define something, Ensign. The ensign's voice carried a crack he couldn't hide. There's no transponder. No emission trail. Just absence. Like a hole in the sky. Zune sighed, lifting his gaze to the forward display. Space was empty, as expected. The fractured moon Ralvex drifted in the distance like a shattered tooth, its debris field caught in weak orbit. Background radiation. Stable. But there's a localized neutrino distortion. And gravitational lensing. Zune straightened. Lensing meant mass, large mass, without visibility. A ship. No, not here. The Soul Dead Zone hadn't flickered in over a century. The humans were gone. Everyone knew that. Send a probe. The ensign hesitated. Already did. It never transmitted back. That got Zune's full attention. He rose slowly, robes shifting over his exoplate armor. The bridge fell quiet. How far is the anomaly? 7,000 clicks. Directly ahead. Zune stepped toward the viewport. The stars beyond shimmered with subtle distortion, as if space were bruised. He felt it now, a wrongness. Not noise, not radiation, just presence. Ancient. Cold. Bring us about 30-degree arc. I want distance. Another officer called out, panicked. Motion, dead center. The stars peeled apart. The thing revealed itself. Not with lights, not with sound, just emergence. The void slithered away like it was afraid to touch the hull of what now filled their screen. Matte black. Angular. Silent. A shape meant to kill awe itself. A massive, faceted triangle, its surface layered with overlapping armor, skin like obsidian broken by deep, surgical lines. No visible thrusters. No insignia. No life signs. Just 3 red circular nodes glowing beneath its underside like the eyes of a sleeping predator. Contact! Contact! Ship class unknown, cried the ensign. Zune's voice was low. That's not a ship. That's a warning. Static tore through their comms. Not a signal. A pulse. Then, UNS Vengeance. Contact acquired. Target lock confirmed. Retaliation commencing. Human. Human. Zune reeled back. Evasive now. Full reverse thrust. The pilot's hands blurred over the controls. Engines responding, but... The Amrekvash shuddered. Gravity twisted. The floor buckled under them. They've locked us in a gravity snare. Another officer screamed, Warp core is fluxing. We can't disengage. Zune slammed his fist into the control panel. Redirect weapons. All batteries, open fire. Negative. Target absorption, our plasma rounds are dispersing. From the alien ship, nothing came. No visible cannon fire. No launch signatures. But ships in their fleet began to vanish. One after another. Sliced apart. Imploded. Erased. They're using kinetic rails. From thousands of clicks out. No delay. No flash. Zune stared, wide-eyed. They've made silence a weapon. He knew the stories. Everyone had. The humans had burned in their own wars. Left ruined by internal collapse. Or so they said. But this was not ruin. This was rebirth by rage. The bridge of the Amrekvash tilted as the ship rolled violently, trying to break the gravity lock. Hull alarms wailed. Zune fought to keep his balance as screens burst into white noise and arcs of power raced across consoles. Get us out of here, he barked. Sir. The forward view erupted in light. Another Dominion cruiser shattered like glass as an invisible mass ripped through its core, followed by nothing but dead silence. Zune watched in horror as the remains of the squadron folded inward, crumpled by unseen forces. He turned, breathing heavily. This is not an attack, he muttered. This is a statement. The ensign whispered, voice hollow, They saw us too late. In the final seconds, Zune did what few Oscary commanders ever did. He activated a distress beacon. Not for reinforcements. No one would arrive in time. Not in this place. He wanted the message recorded. He wanted the galaxy to know. As the red glow intensified on the surface of the Vengeance, Kareth Zune stood tall, ignoring the shaking around him. To his crew, he said one final command. Transmit everything. Let them see the truth. The screen went dark, and the stars blinked once, as if in mourning. Target locks established across all platforms. Commander Lyra Voss said nothing. She stood at the center of the bridge, arms folded behind her back, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red markers lit the projection like bloodstains, each one an Oscary ship caught in range, unaware of what they truly faced. No warnings. No negotiation. Not under Epsilon protocol. The AI's voice echoed beside her, calm and crisp. Shall I prepare transmission, Commander? She shook her head. No broadcast. They've already seen enough. Her voice was low, precise. No rage. No glee. Just controlled intent. Emotion had no place here. Not anymore. Lyra turned to her operations officer. Status of cloak integrity. Optimal. The gravitic sheath held until visual detection. They didn't see us until we chose. She nodded. Good. Begin warming all primary batteries. Passive targeting only. The air on the bridge was still, eerily so. Officers moved like clockwork, disciplined, efficient. Each action calibrated. Not one word wasted. On a human warship, especially this one, there was no room for doubt. Not on Vengeance. 13 years ago. Mars Colony, Aegis platform. The sky turned to fire. Lyra remembered it too clearly, standing by the research facility's glass port, watching the upper atmosphere ripple as the alien bombardment began. She hadn't understood at first. She was 12. The sirens had screamed, but she hadn't run. She'd watched the clouds ignite. The aliens had called it a defensive cleansing. No warning. No terms. Just an assumption that humanity, fractured and noisy, wouldn't respond. They were right, then. She'd survived buried in debris, pulled out by a rescue team days later. Bloodied, broken, eyes burned from the dust. That day, something fundamental inside her had cracked. Not just fear. Something colder. Cleaner. Now, back on Vengeance. A soft chime brought her back. Command uplink received, the AI reported. Authorization. Epsilon Doctrine confirmed. Clause 4A invoked. No quarter. No reply. Lyra stepped toward the command dais, placing her palm against the biometric pad. The ship accepted her presence with a dull hum. Panels around her illuminated in red. Vengeance was awake. Execute doctrine, she said. All weapons warming. Launch bays cycling. Orbital lances charging. Time to first strike, 93 seconds. She watched the countdown start. Unflinching. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harrow, approached from the upper deck. He hesitated before speaking. Commander, confirmation came with a message. From Strategic Command. Lyra arched an eyebrow. What message? He held up the data slate. It was brief. Just 2 lines. They forgot who we were. Remind them. Earth Command. She dismissed the slate and turned back to the screen. The Oscary patrol formation was shifting now, trying to scatter. They'd seen her. Or at least the shadow of her. But it was too late. That was the point. Lyra had trained for this her entire adult life. Humanity's new military doctrine had been forged in silence, shaped by betrayal and refined in the dark places no one dared to look. The rest of the galaxy had moved on, lulled by treaties and alliances. They believed Earth had died with its pride. Let them think that. The silence hadn't been weakness. It had been strategy. A century without signals. No ambassadors. No ships. No colonies. The great powers of the galaxy called it a quiet extinction. But Earth hadn't gone extinct. Earth had gone dark. Commander, The AI spoke again. The Oscary flagship has engaged warp preparations. Lyra turned slowly. And their mistake. The AI pulsed. They tried to run without apologizing. A flicker of a smile tugged at her mouth, but it didn't reach her eyes. Let's fix that. Her voice carried across the bridge with steady finality. Target flagship engines with Lance Battery 3. Disable, don't vaporize. Let them know we held back. Yes, Commander. Deploy the drones. Full saturation pattern. Passive ECM. I want their sensors confused, not blind. Make them guess. Harrow looked up. You're drawing it out. No, Lyra said softly. I'm teaching. He didn't question her further. The ship vibrated once, deep, low. The sound of reality bending. From below deck, the Lance batteries activated, energy collecting in silence across their prism arrays. A beam of compressed gravitational force lanced from beneath Vengeance, invisible to the naked eye, just space curving violently. The Oscary flagship jerked, tumbled, and spun as its core reactors destabilized mid-jump. Not destroyed. Crippled. A statement. Within seconds, the rest of the patrol began firing in desperation. Flashes of plasma streaked toward Vengeance, most harmless. A few close. One struck the hull and dispersed like rain on steel. Lyra didn't blink. Now, send the drones, she said. A swarm of autonomous hunter shells launched from hidden bays. No trails, no engines, just magnetically accelerated death, each one guided by predictive AI systems fed with centuries of alien combat data. Within minutes, 2 more ships fractured mid-maneuver. No explosion. Just quiet disassembly. Clean. Surgical. Report, Lyra said. Enemy fleet at 40%. Remaining vessels scattering. No coordination. Let them scatter, she replied. They'll carry the story faster. The bridge settled again. The glow of red target markers began fading as more ships vanished or retreated. No pursuit orders were given. That wasn't the mission. Fear did more than fire. Lyra stood alone at the center of the command platform, watching the stars return to stillness. The AI whispered, "Strike complete." Epsilon Doctrine observed in full, awaiting further orders. She closed her eyes for a moment. Not in grief, not in celebration, but in certainty. Enemy flagship reactor is offline. Remaining vessels are either disabled or in retreat. Commander Lyra Voss didn't answer immediately. She stared through the observation pane into the black void beyond the bridge, watching the flicker of distant ship debris tumbling without heat or light. The aftermath of contact wasn't fire or explosions, it was absence. The kind of silence only precision could leave behind. "Any signals from the survivors?" she asked. The AI responded instantly, voice neutral. Multiple distress pings. Open spectrum. Non-coded. No terms offered. No surrender. Good, Lyra replied. Let their desperation speak louder than our response. Lieutenant Harrow turned from his station. Do we pursue the survivors? No, she said, cold and firm. Let them carry the story. She stepped toward the central command platform and tapped the holotable. Tactical overlays dissolved, replaced by a live feed of the crippled Oscary flagship. It drifted, venting plasma like blood from a severed artery. Lights still blinked across its broken hull, meaning they were alive, if only barely. Lyra leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. Is their command crew still intact? Life signs confirm at least 7 officers in the forward control deck, the AI confirmed. No command activity detected. Likely in shock. They should be, she murmured. They just met their future. Aboard the Oscary flagship Omrekvash. High Marshal Kareth Zun coughed as black smoke curled through the fractured bridge. He tasted copper, something wet running down the side of his jaw. A support beam had pinned his leg. One eye refused to focus. Everything tilted. Status, he rasped, though no one responded. He turned his head. 4 of his officers were dead. One was weeping silently, the sound lost in the hiss of leaking atmosphere. Zun forced himself upright against the console, dragging his arm across shattered glass to activate the emergency systems. A weak flicker of the tactical display came online. It was worse than he thought. His fleet had been erased. Not fought, removed. There'd been no grand duel. No slow escalation. They hadn't even been worth a warning. And that ship, it was still there, hovering like a goddamned executioner over a battlefield of its own making. Zune whispered, bitterly, "What are you?" "Back on UNS Vengeance. Sir, the flagship just reactivated limited comms," Harrow said, glancing up from his console. "Weak signal. Internal only. They're not calling for help anymore. Just silence." "They're in shock," Lyra replied. "That's part of the doctrine." She folded her arms and tilted her head. "Deploy a single beacon drone. No weapon payload." Harrow blinked. "A message, Commander?" "A reminder," she said. "Code it for archival retrieval. No encryption. Let it be found." He hesitated, then nodded. A small, sleek drone launched silently into the dark, gliding toward the remains of the Omrekvash like a messenger bearing judgment. 2 hours later, fringe of Oscary Dominion space. Across multiple border sectors, thousands of alien ships intercepted fragments of the battle recordings. The Oscary distress channels were filled with static-laced screams, partial footage of shadow destruction, and one distinct transmission that repeated over and over. UNS Vengeance. Human vessel. Unknown origin. Stealth class dreadnought. Fleet size, unknown. Engagement time, 3 minutes. Casualties, total. We didn't fire first. We didn't get the chance. Governments froze mid-session. Military councils convened emergency lockdowns. Some refused to believe it. Humanity was dead, they said. Others knew better. In the embassies of neutral worlds, diplomats stared in stunned silence. They'd called the humans ghosts. Now, they weren't sure that was wrong. Ghosts of vengeance had returned, and they didn't speak. UNS Vengeance, mission room. Lyra sat in the low-lit chamber reserved for psychological decompression, though she didn't use it for that. No one aboard the Vengeance truly decompressed. There were no therapists here. Just AI, hard steel, and a shared understanding. This wasn't a war of survival. It was a lesson. She watched archival footage from her own history, recordings from the Mars colony, still preserved in Earth Command's encrypted black boxes. A child's voice cried from underneath rubble. "Mom." The clip ended. She shut her eyes. Not in grief. That emotion had been burned out long ago. Harrow entered quietly, stepping into the edge of the room's soft light. "They'll call it a massacre," he said. "They called Mars a defensive action," Lyra replied flatly. "They'll retaliate. Then they'll die faster next time." He didn't answer. He just stood with her in the silence. 2 sectors away, Oscary Senate Station. A high-ranking admiral reviewed the footage, frame by frame. His eyes tracked the moment the UNS Vengeance came into view, the instant when 3 cruisers imploded without so much as a sound, the subtle movement of a beam that warped reality around it. The admiral whispered, "They never stopped building. They just stopped sharing." He stood slowly, turned to his communications officer. "Send word to the 12 systems. The humans are not gone. They've evolved into something else." He looked out the viewport. "And they're not asking for permission anymore." Final scene, Vengeance in orbit. Back aboard the UNS Vengeance, the stars had returned to their quiet stillness. Lyra stood on the command deck again, reviewing real-time feeds of alien broadcasts reacting to the event. Fear. Confusion. Anger. Denial. The AI spoke, calm as always. "Would you like me to archive Operation Epsilon?" She nodded. "Tag it. Make sure Earth Command sees everything." "Confirmed. Playback option." Lyra paused. "Not yet." She turned to leave, pausing only once more before the doors closed behind her. "They didn't deserve our silence," she said. "But they'll remember it now. Play it again." The archivist's voice was barely above a whisper, his hands trembling as he tapped the crystalline interface. The footage stuttered, then began anew, low resolution and raw, yet more terrifying than any high-fidelity simulation. A shadow moved against a starfield. A triangle emerged. Then came 3 pulses of red light. No sound. No warning. Then, nothing. No wreckage. No resistance. Just absence. The room was silent except for the low hum of the projector and the shifting breaths of the council watching behind him. They didn't jam communications, the archivist said numbly. They didn't cloak their attack. They didn't speak. And still, no one survived. A diplomat from the Centauri Union leaned forward. What ship was that again? Designation, UNS Vengeance, the archivist replied. Human. Terran origin. Pre-silence architecture, somehow evolved. A different voice spoke from the shadows, clear and slow. So it's true. Vierek, Minister of Defense, Zeppelin Ascendancy. He stood at the heart of the war chamber surrounded by hovering displays. Each one repeated fragments of intercepted panic signals, Oscary command logs, and reactionary communiques from neighboring systems. His scaled hands folded tightly behind his back. For years, he said, pacing slowly, we've mocked their silence. We believed Earth fell. That humanity fractured. He turned to the assembled high command. His gaze burned. We were wrong. A general raised his voice. Should we dispatch scouts to confirm? Vierek shook his head. The Oscary already did that for us. What's left of them is all the confirmation we need. One of his aides cleared her throat nervously. They'll come again, won't they? Vierek didn't answer right away. Then he spoke, his voice like iron. Only if they must. UNS Vengeance, subdeck briefing room. Lyra Voss reviewed the full aftermath silently. The Vengeance's sensor logs showed what alien diplomats wouldn't, the true scale of the panic. Civilian outposts went dark. Mining colonies rerouted patrols. Even pirate networks, normally bold and unafraid, began scrambling into deep voids where even NAV maps had no detail. All because one ship, her ship, reminded the stars what humanity once was, and what it could still become. She turned as Harrow entered, holding a datapad. Word from Earth Command, he said, handing it to her. They've seen the recordings. Lyra accepted it but didn't look down. And they've authorized further shadow deployment. 2 more ships are moving through deep worm space. No contact, no presence, same orders as us. She nodded once. Let them believe Vengeance is alone. They're buying it so far, Harrow muttered. But not for long. She studied him for a second, then asked, Do you think we went too far? He hesitated. No. They burned our colonies. We buried our children. We disappeared because diplomacy failed. This is the consequence. A quiet passed between them. Still, Harrow added softly, the galaxy's listening now. Independent broadcast, CivNet spiral stream. A sleek-faced news anchor, alien but visibly shaken, stared into the stream lens. We bring this emergency segment with breaking data from the Corellian Archive Network. Leaked footage appears to confirm the re-emergence of Terran military vessels, specifically, a stealth dreadnought operating without registry or diplomatic contact. A slow playback of the triangular silhouette shimmered behind him. Though many believed humanity lost after the collapse, new evidence suggests their survival and return, not as negotiators, but as a force of swift and overwhelming violence. He swallowed. No official demands. No surrender terms. No comms of any kind. Only destruction. He turned slightly toward his guest, a Zarn diplomat, sweating through his neck folds. What would you say to the humans if they were listening? The diplomat hesitated, then looked into the stream. I would say, we remember Mars. We remember the silence after the bombardments. And we now understand that silence wasn't weakness. It was waiting. Earth Command, secure transmission, received at Vengeance. The message arrived in hard-coded encryption, burned into isolated frequency bands. To UNS Vengeance. From Earth Command, Central Strategic. Priority, Black Sigma. The stars are reacting. Information is disseminating faster than expected. The silence is broken. Proceed as planned. Objective 2 cleared for initiation. Maintain dark protocols. Do not engage unnecessarily. Let them listen. End transmission. Lyra closed the message with a swipe, lips pressed into a line. She looked out into the void again, where distant stars blinked like wary eyes. Let them listen, then, she whispered. Zarnari Ringworld. Open Senate Assembly. Arguments echoed across the 1,000-tiered chamber. Each faction had a different theory, a different fear. Some argued for retaliation, others for immediate surrender. One even demanded an emissary be sent to Earth, if Earth even still existed. The Speaker of the Rings finally banged his gavel. Enough. The chamber fell into a tense hush. We assumed them extinct, he growled. Instead, they watched. They rebuilt. And now, when they return, they do so without ambassadors or warnings. They speak through destruction. He gestured to the hologram hovering above. We can speculate all we like, but hear this. The next time we see that ship, it will not be asking us for terms. It will be showing us consequences. Aboard Vengeance. Final scene. Lyra walked alone through the ship's upper ring corridor, magnetic boots clicking softly against the floor. Outside, the stars stretched wide and cold. The ship was quiet, its hum low and patient. No celebration, no adrenaline, just the heavy stillness of a predator waiting in tall grass. She paused before a bulkhead door etched with names, rows upon rows, some barely visible under time-faded script. Names of the dead. Names of those whose final breaths were taken in fire and silence when humanity was nearly extinguished. She raised her hand, pressed it to the metal. They're finally hearing us, she whispered. Even if we never speak. The door hissed open behind her. Harrow's voice. Commander. Orders from Earth Command. Objective 2 begins at dawnlight cycle. She didn't turn. Good, she said. Let the next ones listen a little harder. The silence wasn't oppressive. It was deliberate. Every console aboard Vengeance hummed at standby. No klaxons. No flares. Just the soft pulse of a hunter at rest. Commander Lyra Voss stood in CIC, her hands clasped behind her back as holograms hovered before her. A new target profile flickered. Designation: Heckory Bastion, a fortified trade and weapons hub located within the Drenari conglomerate. She read the intel silently. No diplomatic envoy had been sent there since Earth fell silent. The conglomerate had once sold weapons to the very coalitions that glassed 2 human colonies. They had called Earth a cultural fossil. That was before Vengeance surfaced. We've locked their drift corridors, Harrow said, entering beside her. They're bottlenecked. Only one way out, and we're sitting in it. Lyra glanced at him. Civilian population? Large, he admitted. But their leadership is military-owned. Weapons factories. Orbital cannons. 3 destroyers in system. Have they seen us yet? No, he said. But they're about to. She gave a curt nod. Initiate ghost burn. We close the distance on quiet. Harrow hesitated. This one will make waves. Lyra's voice didn't waver. Let it. Heckory Orbital Traffic Control. 10 minutes later. Sir, we have a mass reading at the edge of Drift Corridor Theta. The Heckory command officer squinted at the data. No engine trail. No beacon. Could be debris. No, sir, the tech replied. It's decelerating. He looked again. And then the shadows moved. From the black, the UNS Vengeance emerged like a myth come to life, angular, predatory, and impossibly quiet. Its hull absorbed light. Its underbelly glowed red. The Bastion scanners screamed to life, filling the room with cascading alerts. Contact. Terran vessel. Repeat, Terran vessel. Alarms began to shriek. Planetary defense systems lit up in tandem. The warship just hovered there. Watching. Waiting. Inside Vengeance. Weapons deck. The crew moved like fluid. Disciplined. Petty Officer Reese Chamberlain secured the main cannon rail, running diagnostics. He'd once served on the Titan Rising, a diplomatic frigate. Now, under Lyra's command, he'd witnessed 2 star systems fold under the sheer psychological pressure of this ship's presence alone. He'd never fired in panic. They didn't allow it. On Vengeance, They only fired once. That was all it took. Over comms, the AI spoke with its usual poise. Targeting solutions achieved. Weapons green. Awaiting command authorization. Reese exhaled, steadying his hand on the console. Built for this, he whispered. Every inch of her. Hickory Senate Hall. Ground level. We must open talks, one senator barked. Send a transmission. Show them we mean no harm. They've jammed our long-range band, another snapped. They're not here to talk. A younger diplomat spoke up. This is the same ship that destroyed Oscary Prime. If we don't stand down, we'll be next. They're one ship, someone roared. We have fleets. No one believed it. They'd seen the Oscary feed. They knew how fast one Terran vessel moved, how it struck, how it vanished. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Vengeance. CIC. Commander, the comms officer said, we're being hailed on open local band. It's a surrender transmission. Full systems lockdown. They're grounding their fleet. Lyra didn't smile. She didn't even blink. Do they confess? She asked. The officer hesitated. They accept responsibility, but they say they were forced into supplying arms. Lyra's jaw tightened. Cowards. She stepped forward and activated the broadcast. This is Commander Lyra Voss of the United Nations ship Vengeance. You sold weapons to those who murdered our people. You profited off our extinction. This is not justice. It is balance. She paused. Evacuate civilians. You have 10 minutes. Then she cut the channel. Harrow stared at her. You're giving them a chance? I'm not here for massacre, she said quietly. I'm here for memory. Planetfall. 8 minutes later. Evacuation alarms blared across Hickory Bastion. Shuttles crammed with civilians roared skyward. Defense systems stayed silent, powered down and disabled by Vengeance's earlier ghost pulse. The orbital dockyards began to shake. Then, in eerie synchronicity, the Terran warship unleashed controlled strikes, targeted, surgical. Fire licked the sky. Fuel depots ignited. Factories crumbled. From orbit, the planet bled light. Not a single civilian was harmed. Not a single escape craft intercepted. But the message was clear. Humanity remembered. And it never forgot. Earth, Command Citadel, Black Room. The Admiral tapped a command into the console. The footage from Vengeance streamed in real time. A hush filled the chamber. Intelligence officers, analysts, and top brass watched as the Hickory stronghold became a monument to retribution. They're responding as expected, one officer said. Panic. Realignment. Systems pulling back from Terran border zones. And what about the Vengeance herself? The Admiral asked. A different analyst answered. She's becoming a legend. The Admiral leaned back, eyes narrowing. Good. Let them fear a ghost before they meet the fleet. Aboard Vengeance. Final passage. The stars had moved. Not physically, but in behavior. Trade routes shifted. Outer colonies dimmed their beacons. Fleets once proud and unchallenged now traveled with caution. Rumors spread faster than signals. The galaxy was changing. It had to. Humanity had returned, not with words or treaties, but with steel and silence. Lyra stood in the observatory alone. Harrow approached. They're calling us the knife in the dark, he said. She looked at him. Not bad. Also heard one station called you the last war queen. That made her pause. I'm not interested in being royalty, she said. I'm interested in being remembered. He offered a small nod. We've lit fires. The galaxy's watching. She turned back to the void. Good, she said softly. Then let them understand the truth. She raised a hand, palm against the glass. We didn't come back to conquer. The ship purred beneath her feet. We came back because we were built for this.